curb is not a very complicated thing. This house was built in 2011, we're at 2016, so it's not that old of a house. It's not a spec house, but on the other hand, this house was, you know, in probably $300,000 to $400,000 range. So quite expensive house to have the curb done wrong. The tile was done pretty on point. You know, everything's symmetrical. The niche slopes out, as does this top piece on the knee wall. But the curb is a little interesting for a lot of different reasons. That this is something I've never seen before, where they've come in here, and set a tile, and then set another tile. They're spot buttering. I mean, you can see clearly it's big globs of thin set that is holding this tile to that tile. So tile is not really porous, although it looks like they reversed this tile. So setting tile on top of tile without the porosity that you need, which is kind of odd, other than itself. But the odd thing is that they bumped it out. The only thing I can figure, over here in the corner, it looks like they have a full tile, but I think what they realized, here the discrepancy, I think what they realize is if they put a piece of tile here, they're not going to have quite enough room to cover that cut. So rather than do the cut over again, they decided to bump out the curb, and it's more profound over here. If you can see, if they had only put one piece of tile on, they would have had a gap on this tile. So instead of cutting this other piece of bullnose to match it up, I guess they just figured the easiest thing to do was bump out the curb and make it wider, which is kind of odd. This is fiber rock. I thought it was sheetrock at first, but this is fiber rock. And, you know, again, going back to 2011, the builder never red guarded or used any type of Kurdish Schluter or anything that would have mitigated all the water issues. So people get freaked out a lot about nails and screws into your pan liner, that your pan liner should be pristine and you should never ever perforate your pan liner, which is sort of kind of true. On the other hand, it's very difficult unless you're doing a solid concrete curb. It's kind of difficult not to perforate your pan, but this was done so many times, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 nails. 16 nails is not required to get this this backer board on top of the curb. There's quite a few on the inside too, way more than what is needed. So all they had to do is put about maybe 4 to 6 nails on the inside. Nails, I don't use nail screws because I can countersink my screws, whereas you can't do that with nails. And then they would have done the same on the front, maybe 2, 4, 6, 8, and then on the top 2, 4, 6, 8 instead of twice that amount of nails. And again, screws would be preferable. So this is also 1/4 inch fiber rock. So if they had screwed down into this, and then as I do with my curb, is butter the whole thing, so that now all your screw heads that are countersunk are covered, and then go ahead and red guard the whole thing or do some type of topical membrane, then this would not have happened because the curb was unprotected from day one, and a lot of mold and mildew and rust and all that stuff. And I'm also going to go out on a limb and say that they stuck their wallboard into the pan first. So if I come in and taken this out, which I didn't, I'm going to say that the wallboard was actually inside of the pan, which begat water wicking up that wallboard and making its way, you know, 4 or 5 years later into the whole entire curb, which, because all the material is kind of all together touching each other, and then of course they didn't waterproof anything. So this is a real shoddy curb setup from a builder. This was not a homeowner. This is not a tile guy, although the tile guy worked for the builder. But this was all done by a builder, which is, you know, insane, especially considering the age of the house, that they just passed on all this stuff and allowed it to be what it is. This is totally unnecessary. These folds shouldn't have been on the curb. These folds should have been inside of the wall. Although that's not really relevant to the issues, but it's always kind of curious. So if you're going to do a curb, don't do it like this. Okay, as you saw previously, there was a lot of issues with this curb, and I will be repairing it because the only alternative is to rebuild the whole shower, which is not an option. And then of course a secondary option would be to take out one tile up and pull out all this material and start from scratch from the subfloor going up and over the curb. That's more often than not, that's a solution to any water leak problems that you have with your shower pan. Since dissecting a shower is the only way to ultimately find out why your pan is leaking, pans don't generally leak. It's always a residual. Residual issue would be the knee wall. This is what I find anyway. A bench and or a knee wall and or the curb area. Usually on either end of the curb there'll be some type of failure or issue or something going on to where it leaks into the curb and then downstairs into your ceiling or garage or whatever happens to be below. It's generally always the curb or the bench or the knee wall. Sometimes it's a combination of those three. In this case, it wasn't leaking yet. The homeowner found the problem early. As I already mentioned, these tile were coming up. They were glued on there haphazardly with a lot of thin set, but absolutely no waterproofing. I thought this was Hardybacker, but it's not. It's fiber rock, which is okay. Hardybacker, fiber rock, Durarock, Wonderboard. It really doesn't matter what you're wrapping the curb with. What matters the most is that you actually waterproof it, and they never waterproofed anything. So over time, over the last few years, this has gotten saturated with water. I already mentioned they double stacked the tile in here, which is kind of weird by itself. And then the way they buttered, they didn't really butter their tile. This is called spot bonding. So they just spot bonded a tile on top of the tile, and then on top of the backer that they used ×2, because it looks like there's two pieces of backer here. So there's a lot of issues going on with the build of this curb, and I don't know why the home builder would do this, because this is how it was found from the time the house was built, and you know, it's just a raggedy way to do things. So anyway, I get sidetracked sometimes. So basically what happened is that the curb top was wet. It was coming loose. The actual pieces of tile were coming loose, and that was a good thing because it's preliminary to having problems downstairs or whatever you have downstairs. Eventually that saturation would have transferred through into the floor below, and it would have been a bigger problem, and then we would have been, you know, trying to figure out why the shower pan is leaking, and then it would be taking out the whole shower pan. In this case, we're doing a repair to this curb and hoping for the best, but I'm pretty convinced that I can make this happen. There was a lot of nails in here, many more nails than what needed. This is but a few of the nails that I took out. Obviously I didn't take out any nails from the side here, and there's a couple that's holding the flaps down on either end, so I didn't take those out, and I didn't take these out because they're too far gone into the wood. But I did take out quite a few, you can see, and they're all rusted because of the water saturation. So cleaned everything up and made a nice dustless surface that I'm going to retroactively put a scrap piece of pan liner in. And the reason I'm doing that is there's so many holes here. Rather than patch each hole and kind of hoping for the best, there's no reason not to double up on the pan liner and glue that down from end to end. I'm not going all the way because, again, I'm wrapped 3 times. There's a 3-fold over there, and I can't put a 4th one on there. But I can put a secondary one on top of that. So there's a PVC glue specifically for this, which I have in my hot little hand, and I will apply this both to the surface of the curb material here and the surface of my patch, the entire thing. Usually this is an overlap type process when you're patching in a shower pan or something like that, where you need to overlap usually 2 or 3 inches. And the last patch that I did on a shower pan, I actually overlapped about 8 inches. So it got 8 inches of glue. In this case, I'm going to do the whole thing. There's no overlap here, so the entire back of this patch strip is going to be glued, as well as the top of this, and it will be one cohesive unit. I like to put some type of weight on top of here, because even though, oh, by the way, if you did not know, and a lot of you have experience with the type of glue that actually dries before you put it on, back in the day, a lot of you guys used to use that type of glue. I forget what it's called now. What is that called? Contact cement. This is a lot like contact cement. So once it's applied, you don't put it on wet. You let both sides dry completely. Once they're dry, then you're very careful to attach them because they will adhere to each other. But again, I like to have something flat to put on top of that. And in this case, I really don't have a lot of room to deal with, so I don't know that I'll get a piece in here flat. But that's ideally what you would like to do. And put a weight on it overnight. The curing time is not an overnight thing, but I do have the time to spend on this, so I'm going to let it set overnight with the weight on it. And that will take care of the first step. The second step process will be to put backer board back on here. And in this case, I'm going to use Hardy Backer, which I rarely, if ever, use. But I'm more comfortable using Hardy Backer because it's more dense. It's a more contiguous type of piece. So this will be 1/4-inch backer board that goes on top of here. What I'll inevitably have to do, because this tile right here is already higher than the curb, which is correct because when you put the top piece on, you want the slope. But in order to waterproof this with both the backer board, I'm also going, once I put the backer board down, then I'm going to fill in this huge gap with all of my thin set, and then I'm going to taper off my thin set, and then I'm going to red guard that also, both on the top and on the inside, because that's the only place I can access. So the whole thing will be waterproof twice, and then as a final phase, the tile will go back on top and on the inside, and it will get grouted. These tile will be one full piece rather than the 2 pieces they had going across the curb. So there's 4 pieces times 8 that they had here. They had 8 pieces with one long grout line, and that will not happen in this case. It will be just the 4 grout lines that will match up to this tile. So I'll have that bull-nosed on the outside. So it'll be 4 pieces of bull-nosed, 5 1/4-inch pieces of tile going across the top. And it will be sloped, and so this curb will be waterproofed at that point. Unfortunately, it shouldn't have to get to this when they build a shower. Whether it's a custom job or it's the builder, they should do it correctly, and this was anything but correct. Overnight, this pan liner was set on top of this curb, and it covered up basically all the gazillion holes that they put in there. Probably not necessary to do that. I just felt better about it. So I have a little conundrum here. I had to cut down all of this board back here with my Dremel in order for this 1/4-inch to even fit on here. 1/4-inch is not ideal on top of a curb. You want 1/2 inch, but I don't have a choice because that's what they had. I have a little less than 1 inch to go here with backer board, thin set, backer board, red guard, thin set, and tile to go on top of it. So that gets me into the conundrum that I'm in, because if you remember, these are pieces of tile. And so I cut them down as much as I could, but it's very, very close to the edge. And it's very difficult. So what I ended up doing is just notching out where that's at on my backer board, and then I'll just fill that little section in with thin set. And once that hardens, then I'll be able to red guard the entire top of the curb. And that's the best it can get when you're repairing a curb. Not the easiest process. Oh, by the way, there's backer board on the inside of here. It's above the shower pan, or the shower pan material. So I'm going to get started on getting this repaired. So the Durock is set on the top. The gap is filled with thin set. Everywhere I put a screw is also filled with thin set. As I normally always do, I butter my curb. I can't butter the top of it because of this thickness that I have to adhere to. But I would normally butter the top. I did butter the side. That does a couple of things. It brings both of these pieces together, top and side. It brings them together, fills in that crack. It also fills in the screws that I put in there. And as always, there is a small gap at the very bottom, so that when I set the tile on top of this shower pan, there'll be no way that this backer board could weep up water. Weep up, whatever you prefer. So drying time will happen now. And once that's done, I will red guard the face or the inside part, and I will red guard all the way up to the edge, and then it'll be ready for tile. So I have completely red guarded this curb, both the inside and on the top yesterday. And there's 2 coats on there to make sure that it's watertight. I've already started setting the tile on the inside. These tile I have are 20 inches nominal, 19 3/4 exactly, but there'll be one here, one over here, and one here. I split the difference. That'll be almost 14 and 14. I'll do the same on the outside. These tile I actually bought at Floor & Decor, big 20 by 20, and I had them bullnosed, and the guy did a great job. So these are 6 1/8 to match up to my final measurement here, with a bullnose on the outside, and it should work out pretty good. A good match on the tile. Not exactly, but you know, pretty close. Okay, about 20 minutes later, I have all these cuts made on the top of the curb. And it's not looking too bad. As I said before, it's not a perfect match, but none of these tile are. This floor tile doesn't really match what they put on the wall in the shower. But it's not bad. It's not bad at all. So I'm going to give this some time to dry. It was a very, very tight fit, especially down here, this piece. So I managed to get enough thin set on there that it will definitely adhere good, but it's not the ideal world. This isn't exactly what you want to end up doing. But again, this guy was able to catch this mistake early, and because he caught it early, he saved himself literally thousands of dollars. The only alternative to a bad curb and water penetration outside of your curb is usually taking up the whole shower pan. This bench, at least the tile up, would have to go. A new drain, new shower pan has to be poured, yada yada yada. So a lot of heartache and headache and money was not wasted because he did catch it early. And I was able to salvage. I feel like a bar rescue, like rescue my shower, you know, shower rescue show. And I'm not patting myself on the back. Trust me, I was very apprehensive about this whole process, even though I agreed to do it. A lot of you out there have different fields. You know, I don't know if you're in medical, you know, you're always apprehensive. Can I actually save this patient? Or, you know, you file a report with your company, and, you know, will the report make it to the top, or whatever you're apprehensive about in your work. We are too. So even though sometimes things work out, there's always that possibility, I can't make it work. And that's kind of failing, and I don't like to fail myself, so I was grateful that I was able to make it work. But at the same token, I wasn't 101% sure that I could. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. So I'm going to put a fan on this, dry it as much as possible for the next hour or so, get that thin set really stiff, and then I'll be able to go ahead and put some grout in there. This is bone grout, and I'm lucky with that too, because I have some bone grout that I will be putting in there. All these cracks will be filled, and it will be like it never even happened.